दक्षिणामूर्तिरशेषमर्थं निबोधयत्वा श्रुतकल्पवृक्षः तत्प्रेरिता मे रसनाग्रमेद्य वाग्वादिनी वादयतु प्रसन्ना शङ्कारूपेण मच्चित्तं पङ्कीकृतमभूत्यया किङ्करीयस्य सा माया शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये. Good evening, everyone. Sri Vishwam has talked quite eloquently about me. Much of it is not so deserved. Anyway, I do not want to debate much of it. This text that most have been learning from Srimati Rama Bhagini has been, in one sense, propagated or brought to the world, brought to the fore by the 35th Acharya of the Sringeri Mutt, Sri Abhinava Vidyatirtha Mahaswamigal. What has happened was his guru, Sri Chandrasekhar Bharati Mahaswamigal, had penned a commentary, a vyakhya to this Vivekachudamani, which forms the basis of most of the discourse that takes place on this text. And that commentary was not for the entire 581 verses, but only for about 520 odd verses. That was written in Telugu. The script was Telugu. Of course, the language is very simple, but very eloquent Sanskrit. And this document lay in the gathering dust in the Sringeri Mutt in the days of yore. Now, Acharya Sri Abhinava Vidyatirtha Mahaswamigal took a typewriter from the Mutt, a Sanskrit typewriter, had it repaired, and with his own lotus hands typed in the entire commentary, transcribing it from Telugu to Devanagari, and then gave it to Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan for publishing. And that is how this commentary was finally translated into English, and a very popular book of Vivekachudamani has been published by Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, and that is almost, you can say, the de facto standard of Vivekachudamani. It has for its basis the Sanskrit commentary, which was typed by an Acharya himself of a very great Mutt with his own hands, considering that it was the work of his own guru. Now, Acharya had attained Atma Sakshatkara at the very tender age of 18 itself. So, what was the necessity for him to do this work all by himself? The only conclusion I can come to is that it is for loka sangraha, for the welfare of the world. Naivatasya kritena artho na kriteneha kaschana achasya sarva bhuteshu kaschidartham vyapashraya. So Bhagavan says in the Gita that for a jnani there is nothing to be done. He is a kritakritya. He has done everything that has to be done. So why should a jnani act? In fact, Vivekachudamani also goes on to explain much of the actions of a jnani. The actions of a jnani, as Rama Bhagini had said, is only from the point of view of the onlooker. From his viewpoint, he neither acts nor does he enjoy. He is just pure Brahman, as it were. And his mind rejoices in that Brahman and is totally, absolutely identified with that Brahman, with Brahman. Mind is totally identified in the sense of I is totally identified with Brahman. It is not as though the I Satchidananda is different from Brahman Satchidananda. They are not two entities where A is equal to B. You would reduce A one side of the equation and say it is A. And then on the other side of the equation, one reduces it to be B and then say A equal to B. Which is why the Mahavakyas are called great equations, but I would like to call them great identities. It is only A equal to A ultimately, or A equal to A means pure A. So realizing that A for Atman also in this case, so coincidental, means that realizing oneself totally as Satchidananda Swarupam is the summum bonum of all life. All life on this universe, the goal is only to attain Atmajnana. Amongst all those jivas, today morning we had a class on Kathopanishad, where several statements came in today that amongst all lokas, amongst all worlds that exist, all planes of existence that exist in this universe, the human birth is exalted because it is here that there is a mixture of sorrow, ability to think, and the ability to enjoy. It is the ability to think with the sorrow that is mixed with human life or dominates a lot of human life, that one is able to discern that one needs something better. And all Sanatana Dharma is geared only for this Atmajnana. There can be no doubt about it. Every word, line in the Gita, every line in the Vedas is all meant towards directing us towards Atmajnana. And this Vivekachudamani, the fantastic text towards achieving that end. It can be taken as a beginner's text. It can be taken as the only text that one needs to read. So one can decide where to draw the line. If you want to, fill oneself with erudition and say that I have gone through so many books, well, you can read many other texts. But considering the fact that Shankara Bhagavad-pada, who has penned so many commentaries, chose to write such a treatise on Vedanta in such a simple logic and flow, means that it is been written for the common man. No need to acquire any knowledge of Mimamsa, Tarka, Vyakarana, etc. A teacher like Rama Bhagini will be more than sufficient to explain the nuances of this text. Of course, not anything lesser on her. She has undergone tremendous amount of learning with Swami Paramarthanandaji. So this knowledge, which is expounded in this text, is extremely important. It is the very goal of human life. And Bhagavad-pada emphasizes this in the beginning few verses itself and says that Itah konvasti mudatma yastu swarthe pramadyati durlabham manushandeham prapyatatrapi paurusham. So it is indeed one is a fool, he goes on to say, so strong words, that if one ignores his human birth and does not put effort to attain the Supreme. Now, having said this, he has also gone on to explain in 580 verses, at least 255 of them initially, and the balance are all largely related with Nididhyasanam or focus on the self itself. So there the matter that was expounded in the first 255 verses has been elaborated in a grand manner. And some subtle topics like the Jnani's Prarabdha, etc. have also been included there. This knowledge, though so proximal, is yet very difficult to acquire. And as the summary was stated very clearly, it can take a few janmas or at least a few decades of study. And that few decades of study must be preceded by few janmas of Sukrita, for sure. We have Bhagavan's statement in the 7th chapter of the Gita, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. Bahunam janmanamante. Only after several births, fortuitous births, because of the merit acquired therein, that one perchance acquires this thing of saying Vasudeva Sarvamiti. And that Vasudeva has been expounded in the Gita Shastram as Parabrahma itself, not Saguna Krishna. Saguna Krishna, Saguna Vishnu or Saguna Shiva is a path towards achieving that Brahman, towards realizing that one is that Brahman and not anything else. But it is not the end in itself. So all these things have been explained. And he goes on to say, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. Yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tattvataha. So, Manushyanam sahasreshu, amongst thousands of individuals, it is perchance one that attempts to seek liberation. And amongst those who seek liberation, perchance one attains Bhagavan. So, such a rare thing it is going to be. Now, imagine amongst the countless living beings in this universe, only 7 billion humans are there. Out of 7 billion humans, how many people are interested in spirituality? Most go to temples and say, and very crudely transact temples or their own religion and transact business. Okay, I pray to you, I want this in return. Very few are looking at what happens in the afterlife, what am I going to become, who am I? That is very rare. And amongst those who do that, those who seek the Lord or attain the Lord, attain the self, as it were, will be even more rarer. So it looks to be almost an impossible uphill task. But we need not despair. What Bhagavad Padal says to all this is just 1/4 of a verse in Vivekachudamani. Chittasya shuddhaye karma, natu vastu upalabhyate. So the role of karma or action is just for chitta shuddhi. In that 1/4 of a verse, he has probably summarized dozens of verses in the Bhagavad Gita. The role of action is to purify the mind. So karma yoga, bhakti, devotion, upasana, all those things are covered in just that 1/4 of the verse. Chittasya shuddhaya karma. Now, which means that the reader of Vivekachudamani is expected to be one who has well accomplished karma yoga. And then he goes on to expound the sadhana chatushtaya. Everywhere in the sadhana chatushtaya, he talks only about an uttamadhikari or the highest competent person. The beginning itself on viveka or discrimination, he goes on to say, Brahma satyam jagan mithya ityevam rupo vinischayah soyam nitya nitya vastu vivekaha samudahritaha. So the beginner is expected to know that Brahman is Sat and the Jagat is Mithya and the Jiva is none other than Brahman. And understanding all this is termed to be Viveka. So that is the expectation of the person who is utterly competent, extremely competent to read Vedanta. So where does it leave all of us? Do we have the Vairagya, the Samadhi Shakya Sampatti, the Mumukshutva that goes on? I cannot talk for anybody else, but certainly I can say with myself, certainly not. So all that we can do is to approach a guru. Swami Paramarthananda would say, we do not believe in secular Vedanta. We believe very clearly in Vedanta that is backed by, even I can go to the extent of saying, Saguna Bhakti. So Bhagavad Padal goes on to say a very beautiful verse in Vivekachudamani, which is verse 37. I would like to recite the verse over here and probably remind you all about it. It's a very beautiful verse as the Shishya approaches the Guru and conveys his total surrender. That total surrender means the absence of ego and the acceptance of the Guru's word as final. The verse goes on like this. Swamin namaste nataloka bandho karunya sindho patitam bhavabdho mamuddharatmiya kataksha drishtya ridvyati karunya sudha vivrishtya. Very beautiful verse. He approaches his Guru and says, hey Swamin, namaste. Hey Swamin, not in English, hey, hey as in Sanskrit Swamin. Hey as in Sambodhana Prathama. HEY is a very casual approach, so should not be even in our dreams when one talks to the Guru. So Swamin Namaste, Nataloka Bandho, who is a friend to everybody who worships him. Karunya Sindho, who is an ocean of mercy. Patitam Bhavabdo, I am one who has fallen into the ocean of samsara. Mamuddharatmiya Kataksha Drishtya, may you rescue me by just your sideways glances. Rijvyati Karunya Sudha Vivrishtya. How is your glance? It is Sudha. It is a very outpouring of nectar. So surrender is very total. And that surrender alone can, because this task is humongous. The task in front of us is almost impossible to achieve. But not quite. All acharyas have said that by the prasada of Ishvara and Atma Prasadena, even the Upanishad says that one attains ultimately Atma Sakshatkara. I just want to dwell on one very subtle point that Bhagavad Pada takes in the Sadhana Chatushtayam itself. I prepared to talk about many things else, but understanding that this is more of an introductory course into Vedanta, I thought I would stop myself with this. The verses on Mumukshutva, which goes like this. Ahankaradi dehantan bandhan ajnana kalpitan swaswarupava bodhena muktumicha mumukshuta. Normally, we understand mumukshutvam as the fourth of the tetrad of the quadrant of qualifications, and there we define it as the desire for liberation. Bhagavad Pada here gives a very wonderfully different view. It's a take on the desire for liberation, no doubt about it, because he later says that Vairagyam and Mumukshutvam alone are sufficient to carry one across the four qualities. He defines it as Ahankaradi dehantan, bandhan ajnana kalpitan. He says that the ego, body, mind complex are just created, are a product of ignorance. And mumukshutvam is defined as swaswarupava bodhena moktumicha mumukshuta. So the desire for liberation is not to desire liberation itself, but to be or to remain as the self in the constant dwelling that one is nothing other than the self. Such a very beautiful definition of mumukshutvam one does not come across in any other text, and it also exemplifies or brings out that Bhagavad Pada is having an Uttamadhikari in mind. Let me dwell upon this. If a person were to desire liberation, and let us say an exalted seeker, not a casual one, not a beginner by any chance, but one who is on the verge of, who is extremely qualified to realize the self. Now, such a person, if he were to have the knowledge that I desire liberation, then it poses several doubts on his competence. He perceives himself as being different from Brahman. Even as a sadhaka, he perceives himself as being different from Brahman. He perceives that Brahman is to be known. He perceives that that liberation is a state to be attained. So all these conundrums come when one accepts at a later stage that one should possess the desire for liberation in the form I should become liberated. That means that I is still not placed in Atman Brahman, that I is still placed in this body-mind complex. So, which is definitely not the state of an advanced aspirant. The advanced aspirant has already gone through Chittasya Shuddhaya Karma, he has gone through Sadhana Chatushtaya, he is on the verge of getting Atma Sakshatkara. So, in this case, it cannot be that he is already well practiced that I am Nitya Buddha Shuddha Swarupam and Nitya Mukta Swarupam. So, he cannot have the feeling, even to a little extent, that I need to be liberated. He only should have the feeling I should ever be established in the self. Not I should be established. Swaswarupa, in the nature of the self, everything, okay. Anesthetic payachana, there is only silence. Mauna Vyakya, nothing can be described. So, such a beautiful definition of mumukshutvam, where can we find? It is only in this text. Now, similarly, there are hundreds of other nuances in this text that we can go through line by line. And unfortunately, time is not there. And obviously, you people have all gone through this in great detail. So, I just thought I'll bring about what I always found to be as a delectable portion of this text. And place it before you for your consumption. So basically what is conveyed here is that the advanced aspirant starts with a desire for liberation. Otherwise, why would one come to a Vivekachudamani class? Obviously, there is a gross desire. Okay, I am not happy with my current state. One is reminded of the book Jonathan Livingstone, the Seagull. Jonathan Livingstone by Richard Bach. Now, there amongst all seagulls, seagull is a bird, right? So, all those birds are just content with eating fish, living, procreating, and then ultimately dying and continuing on. This fellow, Jonathan, okay, the seagulls don't have a name, but the author has chosen to give a name to a seagull for just bringing a small book. But he has consequently written a few other books. Very interesting. So, he brings out the fact that this Jonathan aspires for more. He is not interested in simply eating and talking, and so he is interested in perfecting flight. And for him, perfection in flight is the goal of seagull birth, if I can use the word. Similarly, for us, the perfection in oneself, finding the perfection in oneself is the goal of human birth. So, all this has been brought about very beautifully by Bhagavad Padal in this Vivekachudamani. And this one verse is a small example of the delectability that lies in it. And so, I just thought I would bring this out over here for students of this very same text. So, with these few words, I would like to conclude here. Thank you to Vyoma and Rama Bhagini for inviting me over. And it was very nice to participate in this validity function, if I can say that. Thank you all. Sadguru Charanaravinda Arpanamastu. Om Tat Sat. Namaskara.